Hello. So I got one of these new mini OTDR units just as a test, just to see how well they'd work, and thought I'd share some results. It is an OFW brand, and the model number is FWT-100. So they are rated for 1550 nanometers. Seems all good. They say they'll measure up to 80 kilometers, and so I've seen a few of these on AliExpress where they say the 1550 nanometer has a special filter in it that allows you to do live testing. Remember, GPON downstream is about 1480 to 1500. So the 1550, it's interesting. It's just a little bit higher than the GPON downstream, and of course the filter that some of these things claim to have, one might think is a notch filter where it can separate out the actual GPON downstream from the test frequency or the test wavelength, that 1550, so that it doesn't pick it up. But unfortunately, that does not work. So let's just have a quick look. I got the SCAPC model, and they say, or they claim, active fiber live test. Seems all good. It's a nice little device. It's nice and compact, easy to use. It's got a few features like the optical power meter and the visual fault light, or visual fault laser is on there. Like all things, it's got a useless little LED torch light, so yeah, it works fine. It seems to run a very cut down version of Android, and it's very locked down. You can't install apps or do much with it. Yeah, so nice little device. Well, it could be. We scroll down, we'll just have a look at some of these, some of the specifications. Multi-touch LCD, yes you can. On the unit you can zoom in, you can rotate the screen to zoom in on various events, blah blah blah. Again, supports active fiber and a 3 meter event dead zone. Another support live test. I was actually really kind of hoping that they could filter out the GPON and actually do a live test, but yeah, we'll see why shortly. We'll carry on down. Blah 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 blah. I do like that they are Type-C USB for recharging, so that's quite lovely. Okay, so that's the device. Now let's have a look at some of the outputs from it that I've loaded onto the computer here. I tested at two different sites. One is Juliet and one is Tom. The PON head end is within 5 kilometers of both of those sites, so I figured that would be a nice simple test for it. And let's have a look at what happens. I've got a 1 kilometer launch cable that ended up, actually, I believe it's something like 1,050 meters. So if we zoom in, we've got our APC connector at the start, then we've got a nice test of a 1 kilometer cable. Then at the end of the 1 kilometer cable, we have a connector, and that goes into another cable that's just a butt joint or a male-to-male APC connector, green. Now on this particular one, About 10 meters after that is a fusion splice. So if we look here, we've got, so let's say we're at 1050. We're not sort of getting a clear image again till we are at 1080. So that's sort of looking at about a 30-meter dead zone after that event there. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. Once it goes through, so if that's the joint there, about 1060, 1065, that's about where the splice is, and then we're back into a solid length of fibre. Now that one goes, I think it's about another kilometre until we get down to, yeah, just over a kilometre until we get down to the pit, and in that pit is a what do you call it? A splitter, and that's where the problem starts. So once you go through a splitter, it seems you drop down into interference from the actual pond downstream, which is serving other clients, of course. So that noise, of course, it can't filter out, and that appears in our signal, and that's where we go down into the fuzz or the mire. Now the good thing is though, although we can't test anything in this portion here, we do when we hit the pond port on the OLT at the connector there, we get some reflectance from that point, and that is at just over 3.5 kilometers, or about 2.5 kilometers if we take into account the launch cable, which would be about correct. So it can tell us where the cable is broken. So that's handy. However, if you've got a live signal, it's just a mess. My apologies, I've got a bit of a blocked nose with hay fever at the moment. So looking at this on a 5 kilometer test at 100 nanosecond interval, we are looking at, I might need to zoom back out a bit. That's the splitter I'm actually after. That one there. So I think we were looking at about a 30-meter dead zone in there. That should actually just be a drop, flat again, and then another drop is what we're actually looking for. Now if we look at the next higher resolution, the 50, again we're getting the exact same reading for the GPON pond port, so that's cool. And our launch cable ends at the correct spot. However, this time, if we're looking at the, can I focus that on there? Okay, so yeah, 1049.59 meters. Okay, so our event dead zone seems to end around about 1070 meters that time, and we've got a little bit of a bump here now, which I think is that is going to have something to do with the fusion splice at that point. If we go higher again in resolution, I think we lose it mostly now. So 1050, and we are coming back in right on about 1060. So yeah, unfortunately in here is a whole segment of cable that we're just not detecting, a 10 meter length from a butt joint up there. It goes through the butt joint, we lose some signal, and then it's a 10 meter cable where it then hits a fusion splice where we should lose some more signal and it'll carry on. So it should be drop, goes flat for about 9 meters, another smaller drop for the fusion splice, and then it should come out smooth here like it does. So yeah, bit unfortunate. And again, when we sort of get to the actual pond splitter down the road, we're going down into the fuzz because the pond signal is interfering with anything that comes back below that signal level. Tom. So I'll explain this one. This is a 1050 meter launch cable. Then we've got a butt joint, or a butt joiner going into about a 10, might be about 15 meters cable, and then there is another fusion splice. This kind of looks a little bit better, to be honest. The way that it drops down, goes flat again, then drops as it goes through the fusion splice. It should be a big drop on the first one, should go flat, and then a little drop on the second one. And then it comes out there. So it's hard to tell what's going on through here. So we've really got an event dead zone still of, where are we, 1050 to 1087, so it's like 37 meters, a far cry from the 3 meters that it promises. And then this one's got about a 70 meter, I believe it is, length down the road to the pit, where it then goes into a, I think it's a 16-way splitter. So the signal drop is more than sort of 6 dB. What's that? 24, more than 24 down to sort of 18, and then we're just into the noise or the fuzz of our GPON downstream signal. It goes through several different cables that have been fusion spliced at various points, and then arrives at the cabinet with the OLT, and at 4.1 kilometers, less our launch cable, it matches up on the maps, and we hit our pond port and we get the reflectance there. We turn up the resolution, we'll go 50 nanoseconds and zoom in, and we'll just see if we've got any improvement here. Kinda do. You can almost kind of see how it flattens out just there, and then it just drops down a bit. Although I'm expecting sort of that flat piece should be down here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, hopefully you can, but I'm expecting it down to be around about this 24.6 line, and then it would sort of go a bit flatter if that was only a sort of a 0.2 dB loss on a fusion splice there. So yeah, unfortunately, I mean, that there is 1060, so at best that's going to be about 10 meters of dead zone. And then here we're sort of sitting up around about the 1083, so that's another 15 meters. So yeah, it's not doing great. What's that? 25 meters of dead zone between. Well, actually, no, sorry, that's still the 30 meters there. Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, I thought I thought that would be interesting. Basically, you can tell where the end of the cable is. Of course, no doubt it'll be measuring a lot more if there was no pond signal coming in at the end. But once you're down into the pond signal, it's just noise, and you can't test anything really. If these cables were all spliced together, and this splitter was down over at the main cabinet rather than out in the field, then that would be looking a lot more interesting. But because that splitter's there and we're losing so much signal close to us, it's not really much help. But yeah, good thing is the distances of these things are measuring out around about okay, as is the pond port down at the cabinet, but anything in between, no go.